Let's have a heart-to-heart, because there's something deeply painful and confusing about dealing with a narcissist. You keep showing up with kindness, empathy, and grace, believing it'll somehow melt their defenses, shift the dynamics, or earn their respect. But what if I told you your goodness isn't the problem, but where you're placing it might be? Let's be honest. Many of us were raised to be nice before we were ever taught to be clear. We learned to smile when we were uncomfortable, to stay quiet, to keep the peace, and to give others the benefit of the doubt, even when our guts screamed otherwise. But here's the hard truth. Niceness without clarity is self-betrayal in slow motion. When you're dealing with a narcissist, niceness becomes a dangerous disguise. They don't interpret your kindness as generosity. They interpret it as weakness. They don't see your patience as grace. They see it as permission. And every time you avoid clarity to keep the peace, you give them one more inch of power. Clarity doesn't mean cruelty. It doesn't mean shouting or slamming doors. Clarity means standing grounded in your truth without shrinking, without apologizing. It sounds like this. I'm not available for this kind of conversation. I won't engage when I'm being disrespected. That's not true, and I won't participate in rewriting what happened. Clear words, calm voice, strong spine. Niceness says, I don't want to upset them. Clarity says, I'm not going to abandon myself to soothe someone else. Clarity creates safety, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Because when you're clear, people know where they stand. They know what's acceptable and what's not. Narcissists hate clarity because it removes their favorite playground, confusion. So stop sugarcoating your truth. Stop walking on eggshells to protect someone who never protected your peace. Start choosing clarity, not to control the other person, but to finally honor yourself. You don't owe anyone niceness at the cost of your own mental and emotional dignity. You owe yourself the courage to speak with clarity, because that's where healing begins. Setting a boundary is not a betrayal. It's not revenge. It's not cold, and it's definitely not unkind. But if you've ever dealt with a narcissist, you know how quickly they flip the script. The moment you try to create healthy distance, they accuse you of being selfish, dramatic, too sensitive, or cruel. That's because narcissists have one major fear: losing access to what they feel entitled to, your energy, your empathy, your forgiveness. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. And only those who are respectful, honest, and emotionally safe get invited through. A boundary is not about keeping people out, it's about keeping you whole. Narcissists thrive in spaces where your boundaries are vague or negotiable. They will test your limits just to see if they can cross them. And if you let it slide once, they learn that your no means maybe, and your stop means convince me. That's how the erosion begins. Quietly, subtly, over time. So how do you reclaim your space? You start by holding the boundary, not just setting it. It sounds like this. I'm stepping away from this conversation if the disrespect continues. I don't owe you access to me when I'm being devalued. This is what I need to feel emotionally safe. It's not a negotiation. Yes, they'll push back. Yes, they'll guilt trip you. Yes, they may rage or withdraw to punish you. But that's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're no longer doing what they were counting on. And that's powerful. We're not here to be endlessly available, constantly accommodating, or emotionally exploited in the name of being nice. We're here to be whole. Remember this. Your boundary is the love you didn't receive but now give to yourself. Your boundary is the parent you needed, the protector you never had, the voice you once silenced. It's not cruelty. It's not punishment. It's protection. And you deserve to feel safe in your own life. You cannot reason with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. When you're in the presence of a narcissist, the truth becomes a moving target. They distort facts. They twist your words. They rewrite reality to cast themselves as the victim and you as the villain. And every time you try to defend yourself, clarify your intent, or set the record straight, you fall into their trap. Because narcissists don't want resolution. They want control, and confusion is their favorite weapon. You start wondering, did I really say it that way? Maybe I overreacted. What if they're right and I'm the problem? This is called gaslighting, and it works best when you believe you can win their approval by playing their game. But let me be clear, you do not owe anyone a debate over your lived experience. You do not need to defend the truth of what you felt, what you saw, or what you survived. Narcissists aren't confused, they're strategic. They challenge your memory, distort conversations, and flip the script, not because they're unsure, but because they know that if you stay tangled in defending yourself, you stay distracted from protecting yourself. So here's what to do instead. Stop explaining your heart to someone who's made up their mind to misread it. Stop replaying conversations hoping they'll get it this time. Stop offering your truth to someone who uses it against you. Instead, trust your own clarity. You were there, you felt what you felt, and deep down, you know when someone is manipulating your story to avoid accountability. You don't need to fight to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Say your truth once, say it calmly, say it with strength, and then walk away from the argument they keep trying to reopen. Your peace is more powerful than their chaos. Your silence can be louder than any defense. Sometimes the greatest power move isn't proving you're right. It's no longer needing their version of the story to make sense. You're not here to be cast in someone else's fiction. You're here to live fully in your truth. It's one of the most beautiful human things we can offer. Compassion, empathy, forgiveness, softness, second chances. It's what makes us loving and open and connected. But here's the thing. Not everyone deserves access to your emotional wealth, especially not someone who weaponizes it. Narcissists don't see your empathy as a bridge. They see it as a leash. They count on your kindness. They bank on your compassion. They know exactly which emotional buttons to push to keep you in a state of guilt, confusion, or obligation. You give and give, thinking your tenderness might eventually reach them, but all they do is take, twist, and demand more. This is the trap of emotional overinvestment. You keep making emotional deposits in someone who is emotionally bankrupt, and they never intend to pay you back. You apologize even when they've hurt you. You comfort them while ignoring your own pain. You try to understand their side while they mock or dismiss yours. That's not connection. That's emotional extraction. So what's the alternative? You start discerning. You stop handing out empathy like candy to people who weaponize it. You stop confusing kindness with self-abandonment. You stop giving people access to your heart when they've shown they only want to exploit it. Empathy is a gift, not a debt. And it should never be demanded, manipulated, or guilted out of you. Endless emotional labor to someone who shows no willingness to grow, no willingness to reflect, no willingness to respect the very feelings you keep offering them. The most radical act of self-love sometimes looks like this. I care deeply, but I will no longer carry your emotional baggage. I can feel compassion and still choose distance. I love myself too much to keep bleeding for someone who never learned how to heal. You don't have to become cold. You don't have to harden. But you do have to redirect your warmth to people who can hold it with care. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your soul. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. And not everyone has earned the right to sit at your emotional table. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the person hurting you is to step back and let the silence speak Here's what we often get wrong. We believe that if we can just find the right words, say it in the perfect tone, or be endlessly patient, we can finally make the narcissist understand. We try to teach them with kindness. We try to awaken their empathy with emotional explanations. But here's the truth that's hard to swallow. Narcissists don't learn through words. They learn through consequences. They don't suddenly become accountable because you made a good point. They don't feel empathy because you cried in front of them. They don't shift because you gave them yet another chance. They only change, if they ever do, when the cost of their behavior becomes real. And you know what that cost often looks like? Your silence, your absence, your refusal to keep participating in the cycle. When you remove your energy from their drama, they lose their favorite source of supply. When you stop reacting, they lose control of the emotional puppet strings they were yanking. When you no longer rush in to explain, defend, or rescue, they are left to sit in the discomfort they've spent their life avoiding. You're not doing it to punish them, you're doing it to preserve you. Because sometimes words are no longer bridges, they're bait. And every time you re-engage, you teach them that the boundary was temporary, that there's still room to manipulate, that access to you is still negotiable. But when you choose space, you teach something far more powerful. You no longer get to cause chaos and call it love. You no longer get access to me when you're only here to harm me. You no longer get to avoid the natural consequence of disrespecting my boundaries. You stop teaching with your voice and you start teaching with your absence. And while it may feel cold at first, it's actually the most honest form of feedback there is. You're no longer begging to be seen. You're no longer over-explaining your pain. You're saying, with your choices, this is what it costs to keep mistreating me. This is the one that cuts the deepest, because it's not just about them. It's about the part of you that keeps hoping that maybe this time they'll see your worth, that maybe this time your truth will land. That maybe, just maybe, if you explain it the right way, they'll finally look at you with the respect and love you've been craving. Let's pause here. This longing, it's not weakness. It's human. And it often traces back to childhood wounds where love was conditional, where attention had to be earned, and where your needs were labeled as too much. And narcissists know how to find this part of you. They mirror your dreams. They mirror your wounds. They give just enough affection, approval, or validation to hook you, and then they take it away to keep you chasing it. They dangle your worth like a prize at the end of a performance. But here's the truth that liberates you. You don't need their validation to be enough. You never did. And the refusal to acknowledge your value says nothing about your value and everything about their inability to see clearly through the fog of their own ego and fear. The moment you stop seeking their approval is the moment you start healing. You start speaking for yourself, not to be understood by them, but to be in integrity with yourself. You start holding your truth not because they accept it, but because it's yours. You start measuring your worth by how you feel in your own skin, not by how they respond to your presence. You reclaim all the power you gave away trying to be seen. This shift isn't easy. It takes grief. It takes unlearning. It takes sitting with the loneliness that surfaces when you detach from people who were once your emotional mirrors. But what you gain, inner peace that doesn't require permission, self-trust that doesn't shatter under manipulation, confidence that no longer needs to be fed externally. You start validating yourself in real embodied ways. I know what I experienced, that's enough. I trust my emotions. They're not wrong or excessive. I don't need your validation to feel secure in my truth. And from that place, you stop chasing people who withhold love like a prize. You stop shrinking to stay connected. You stop twisting yourself into a shape that fits inside someone else's brokenness. You stand tall. You stand whole. You stand free. Because the most powerful thing you can ever say to a narcissist is not, I forgive you, or I still care, or let's fix this. It's, I don't need your version of me to believe in who I am anymore. There comes a moment, a sacred turning point, when you stop trying to earn love in places where it was never truly being offered. When you stop throwing your emotional pearls at people who trample them and ask for more. When you finally realize that your worth was never something to be negotiated, defended, or proven. Dealing with a narcissist isn't just exhausting, it's soul-deep erosion. It chips away at your confidence, your clarity, your sense of reality. It makes you question the very parts of yourself that used to feel solid, but not anymore. This isn't about becoming hard or bitter. This is about becoming clear, grounded, brave, awake. You don't need to be cruel, you don't need revenge, but you need a self-honoring clarity, healthy boundaries, emotional discernment, silent exits, and the kind of self-summation that no one can take away. You stop being nice, not because you're heartless, but because your heart is sacred and you're done giving it to people who only take. You stop over-explaining, over-feeling, and over-giving to someone who would rather distort your truth than face their own. You stop participating in the pain and start participating in your healing. And in doing so, you reclaim something you never should have had to lose. Your peace and your power, so your voice, your wholeness. Let this be the moment you come home to yourself. Not louder, not harsher, not colder, just stronger. You don't need their apology to close the door. You need your own permission to walk through it. Did you have that now?